Our story begins in the shadowed heart of Transylvania, a land of dark forests, dread mountains, and black, bottomless lakes. It is the late 19th century, a time when magic and devilry still cling to the misty air. Count Dracula, the monarch of all vampires, is dead, but his death was not an end to the evil. His disciples live on, a wicked cult dedicated to spreading their corruption across the world. Through these very forests, a lone passenger, a beautiful young woman named Marianne Danielle, is being jostled inside a speeding coach. She's a French schoolteacher, bright-eyed and full of hope, on her way to a new position at a prestigious academy. But her journey is far from pleasant. The coachman drives his horses at a reckless, frantic pace, as if fleeing from some unseen terror. Marianne, bounced around inside, pleads with him to slow down, but her cries are ignored. The driver's face is a mask of fear, his eyes wide with panic. Suddenly, the coach lurches to a halt in a muddy clearing. A fallen log blocks the path. The driver, sweating and terrified, gets down to move it. He seems more afraid of the encroaching darkness than the obstacle itself. As he struggles with the log, Marianne sees a mysterious figure watching from the edge of the woods. The coachman finishes his task and urges his horses on, leaving the stranger behind in the mist. They finally arrive at a small village inn, the Running Boar. But instead of taking her to her final destination, the driver abruptly abandons her, tossing her luggage to the ground and speeding away as if the devil himself were at his heels. Marianne is left utterly alone, stranded in a strange village at nightfall. The innkeeper, a stout man named Johann, welcomes her in but is visibly shaken when he learns she is traveling alone. He informs her that the next coach won't arrive for 2 days, and worse, the inn has no rooms available. The tavern is filled with locals who fall silent, staring at her with a mixture of pity and fear. It's clear they know something she doesn't. Just as despair begins to set in, a grand, elegant carriage pulls into the courtyard. A woman of noble bearing, dressed in black, steps out. She introduces herself as Baroness Mainster. Seeing Marianne's distress, the Baroness offers her a place to stay for the night at her nearby chateau. Despite the innkeeper's wife desperately trying to warn her away, Marianne feels she has no choice and gratefully accepts the offer. The Baroness's chateau is a grand Gothic structure perched ominously on a hill overlooking the village. Inside, the great hall is vast and cold, filled with flickering candlelight that casts long, dancing shadows. The Baroness introduces her loyal servant, Greta, a stern, silent woman whose expression is unreadable. Over a lavish but lonely dinner, the Baroness speaks of her deep isolation, explaining that she never receives visitors. As she talks, Marianne can't help but notice the profound sadness in her host's eyes, a sorrow that seems to permeate the very stones of the castle. Later that evening, as Marianne prepares for bed, she is startled by a handsome young man who appears on her balcony. He is the Baroness's son, and he tells a heartbreaking story of being held captive by his own mother, chained to the wall for years. He begs Marianne for her help, and her compassionate heart is moved. Believing the Baroness to be cruel and unbalanced, Marianne agrees to help him escape. She steals the key to his chains from the Baroness's room while she sleeps. Unlocking his shackles, she sets him free, unaware of the monstrous act she has just committed. His freedom is short-lived for Marianne. Back in the great hall, she finds the Baroness dead in her chair with 2 small puncture wounds on her neck. From the shadows emerges Greta, the servant, who begins to laugh with a chilling, triumphant madness. "She's dead, and he's free," she cackles. As Marianne recoils in horror, Greta reveals the terrible truth. For 20 years, the Baroness had kept her son a prisoner, not out of cruelty, but to protect the world from him. He was a creature of the night, a vampire, and his mother had been luring young women to the chateau, not as companions for herself, but as sustenance for him, desperately trying to keep him alive and contained. But now, with the Baroness gone, the monster is unleashed upon the world. Terrified, Marianne flees the chateau, running blindly through the dark, menacing forest. She eventually collapses from exhaustion, her ordeal seemingly at an end. But fate has other plans. She is discovered by a passing traveler, a distinguished man who introduces himself as Dr. Van Helsing. He is a doctor of philosophy, theology, and metaphysics, a scholar with a very particular field of expertise. He tends to the shaken Marianne and takes her to the local inn to recover. At the inn, the atmosphere is somber. The villagers are holding a wake for a young woman, Gina, who was recently found dead. The local doctor, Tobler, dismisses it as a simple case of fever, but Van Helsing is not so sure. He asks to see the body and is led to a room where the girl lies in an open coffin, surrounded by grieving family and pungent strings of garlic, a local custom, they explain, to ward off evil. As he examines the girl, Van Helsing discovers the same two telltale puncture marks on her throat that he saw on the Baroness. His suspicions are confirmed. The village is plagued by a vampire. The local priest is away, leaving the town spiritually defenseless. Van Helsing knows he is the only one who can stop this. While Marianne recovers, Van Helsing wastes no time. Knowing the source must be dealt with, he heads to the Meinster family crypt. Inside, he finds the Baroness lying in her coffin, appearing peaceful in death. But Van Helsing knows this is a facade. With grim determination, he takes a wooden stake and a heavy mallet. Positioning the stake over her heart, he brings the mallet down with force, driving it deep into her chest. The sound echoes in the stone chamber as the Baroness's unholy existence is finally brought to a true end. His first task complete, he returns to the inn to consult with the priest. He informs the priest that the Baroness is at peace, but his relief is cut short. He learns that the young woman, Gina, has vanished from her coffin. The priest is distraught, and Van Helsing's face hardens. He knew this would happen. Gina has been taken, destined to become the Baron's first new bride. Meanwhile, Marianne is taken to the girls' school where she was meant to teach. The headmaster, Herlang, and his wife are relieved she is safe but are grieving the loss of their student, Gina. Dr. Tobler, the bumbling local doctor, is also present, convinced the girl simply died of a fever and dismissing the local superstitions. Van Helsing, however, insists on examining the body one last time. He finds the two small puncture marks on her neck and reveals their true meaning to a disbelieving Dr. Tobler. That is the mark of the vampire, he states plainly. He instructs the staff to move Gina's coffin to the stables and have it watched at all times. Under no circumstances is the coffin to be left unguarded. Overcome with guilt for her part in this tragedy, Marianne volunteers to take a turn watching over the coffin in the stables. The stable hand, unnerved by the task, reluctantly agrees and leaves her alone in the dim, quiet room. As the hours pass, the silence is broken by a faint creak. The lock on the coffin mysteriously falls to the floor. Slowly, the lid begins to rise. Marianne watches, frozen in terror, as Gina sits up, her eyes wide and lifeless, a cruel smile playing on her lips. She is no longer the sweet girl from the inn. She is a creature of the night, and her fangs are bared. Just as the undead Gina lunges for Marianne, the stable door bursts open and Van Helsing appears. He brandishes a silver crucifix, its holy light repelling the creature, which hisses and retreats into the shadows, vanishing from sight. Marianne collapses, unconscious from the shock. Van Helsing carries her back to her room, where he finally tells her the full horrific truth about Baron Meinster. He explains that she has been under the vampire's influence, a subtle poison that makes her vulnerable to his will. To protect her, he places his rosary around her neck. Whatever you do, he warns, do not take this off. He instructs her to lock the door and let no one in before he departs to hunt the Baron. But Marianne is heartbroken. She still sees the handsome, tragic young man from the balcony, not the monster Van Helsing described. In a moment of grief and confusion, she tears the rosary from her neck and throws it aside. The protection is gone. Moments later, a bat flutters at her window, squeezing through a small opening. It transforms before her eyes, and Baron Meinster stands in her room, his eyes burning with an unholy light. He speaks to her, his voice a mesmerizing whisper, pulling her deeper under his spell. He is here for his bride. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay awesome, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content.